Cole grabbed Anna's plate and smashed it at her feet in front of the whole yard. His mother leaned back in her chair and said, "That's my boy. She needed that." My 4-year-old grandson looked at his father and whispered, "Daddy, stop." I reached into my bag, unlocked my phone, and pressed play. Cole's face went white before the first 10 seconds were over. He had no idea I'd been waiting 8 months for exactly this moment. My name is Ava Lawson. I am 67 years old. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and for the last 8 months of my life, I became something I never expected to become at this age. I became the kind of woman who makes phone calls at midnight drives 2 counties over to meet strangers and learns the exact legal definition of coercive control because she simply had to. My husband Thomas passed 3 years ago. 38 years together, and I will not pretend the quiet he left behind did not break me open for a while. But grief has a way of sharpening your attention. When the noise of a full life goes still, you start seeing things you had been too busy to notice. I started noticing my daughter, Anna. She was 35 that summer, and she used to be the kind of woman who filled every room she entered. Not loudly. Anna was never loud. She had this particular way of making everyone feel like the most interesting person alive. She had studied graphic design, built her own small client list. From nothing drove herself to meetings in that beat-up Honda she refused to trade in because, as she said, it had never let her down. That was Anna. Loyal to things that worked. Maybe a little too loyal to people as well. Cole Briggs came into her life 4 years before that summer. Tall, well-spoken, the kind of man who remembers your coffee order and pulls out your chair. I liked him at first. I want to be honest about that. But I gradually noticed that every time I called Anna, she sounded a little smaller, a little more careful about which words she chose. Do you know that feeling when someone you love starts talking the way you step through a dark room, slow and deliberate, and always braced for something? Namun, the first real moment came 8 months before that 4th of July. Anna had come over to help me replant the flower beds, and when she reached up to pull a stubborn root, her sleeve slid back. I saw it for less than 3 seconds. A ring of bruising around her wrist, yellowish green, the kind that is 4 or 5 days old. She saw me see it. She pulled her sleeve down without a word and said she had caught it on the cabinet door. I have thought about that moment many times since. I did not push. I had been a librarian long enough to know that if you press too hard on something fragile, it disappears. So I kept my hands in the dirt and my voice steady, and after Anna drove home that evening, I went to Facebook. I know that sounds small, but I remembered a name Cole had mentioned exactly once early on, a woman named Renee, someone he had dated before Anna. He said her name once, and then never again, the way people mention things they want you to forget. I found Renee Caldwell in 40 minutes. I sent her a message. She replied in 2 hours. Does it strike you the way the most important conversations of your life sometimes begin in the quietest possible way? What Renee told me over the next 3 weeks changed everything I thought I understood. She had left Cole 2 years before he met Anna. She had left with a duffel bag and her sister's phone number written on her hand because she did not trust herself to remember it. She had photographs. She had a video taken on a shaking phone through a cracked bathroom door that she had never shown anyone because she was ashamed, she said. Shame does that. It protects the wrong person almost every time. I asked if she would speak to someone official. She was quiet a long time. Then she said, if it stops him from doing this to someone else, yes. I found a family law attorney in Lexington named Patricia Webb. I found a domestic violence advocate named Sandra Oaks at a nonprofit 40 minutes from my house. And I found Detective Roy Hutchins at the County Sheriff's Department, a quiet, careful man who had worked these cases for 20 years, and who, when I sat across from him with Renee's photographs and my own notes, looked at everything slowly and said, Mrs. Lawson, how long have you been building this? 8 months, I told him. He nodded and said, "Keep going." So I did. By the time the Briggs family sent out the 4th of July invitation, a cookout at Cole's parents' property outside Harlan, Kentucky, 60 acres, his father Earl had inherited, I had 41 screenshots. Renee's sworn statement bank records showing Cole had quietly removed Anna from their joint account 3 months after the wedding, and a phone full of recorded conversations Anna had sent me late at night when she thought I was asleep. She had been sending them for months without ever explaining why. I think some part of her already knew. She just needed someone to hold what she could not hold herself. I drove to the cookout alone. I arrived early. That is always what I do. The Briggs property was loud and bright American flags. On every fence post, the smell of charcoal and cut grass, children running between folding tables. Earl Briggs met me at the gate. He was a wide-shouldered, quiet man who had always seemed vaguely out of place inside his own family, the way some people look like they wandered into a party they did not choose. He shook my hand and said he was glad I came. Something behind his eyes said he meant it for a reason I did not yet fully understand. Donna Briggs was another matter. Cole's mother was the sun that entire family orbited, large voice, large opinions, the specific energy of a woman who had spent 30 years deciding that whatever her son did was correct by definition. She hugged me too hard and said Cole and Anna were on their way. Anna arrived with Cole and their son Jake, who had just turned 4 and had his grandfather Thomas's stubborn little chin. She hugged me and held on 2 seconds longer than usual. I smoothed her hair and said nothing about what was on my phone. Have you ever had to stand that close to someone you love knowing what you know and simply wait? The afternoon moved. Burgers, corn, sweet tea. Cole worked through the party with the easy confidence of a man who has never doubted the room belongs to him. He corrected Anna 3 times before dinner. How she had cut Jake's food, a story she was telling incorrectly, a chair she had chosen that apparently blocked the cooler. Small things. The kind that sound like nothing unless you have been listening for 8 months. Then after dinner, Anna brought Jake a plate of watermelon. Jake, being 4 years old and entirely unconcerned with consequence, knocked it off the table. Cole turned from his conversation mid-sentence. He looked at Anna with that flat, empty look I had seen described in every document I had ever read. He said, "Are you actually incapable of watching him for 5 minutes?" "It was an accident," Anna said, already moving to clean it up. He grabbed her plate, her own plate still half full, and threw it into the grass at her feet. The plastic cracked. Sweet tea went across her legs and across Jake's sneakers. The entire yard went silent the way a yard only goes silent when something has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. That, Donna Briggs said from her lawn chair with a slow, satisfied nod, is what happens when you cannot manage your own child. That's my boy. She needed that. Jake looked at his father and said very quietly, "Daddy, stop." So I stood up. I want to be precise about what happened in the next 4 minutes, because they were the most important 4 minutes of my life. Cole turned to look at me with that expression men like him use for women like me. Patient, tolerant, slightly amused. The expression that says, "Sit back down, this doesn't concern you." I unlocked my phone. "Cole," I said, "before this goes any further, I need you to watch something." He started to speak. I pressed play. What came from that speaker was Renee's video. 38 seconds. Cole's voice. Renee's voice. A sound that required no explanation at all. Every adult in that yard heard every word of it. The color left his face completely. I continued, and I was surprised by how steady I sounded, been working for 8 months with a family law attorney, a domestic violence advocate, and Detective Roy Hutchins at the County Sheriff's Department. He has Renee Caldwell's sworn statement your bank records from last March and 41 documented incidents that Anna sent to my phone over 8 months. I turned to my daughter. Her hands were pressed over her mouth, eyes wide and locked on mine. He has had everything he needs for 6 weeks. He has been waiting for my call. Make the call, Mom, Anna whispered. I stepped away from the table and I called Detective Hutchins. He arrived in 19 minutes. Cole did not run. Men like Cole never run in public, they negotiate. He spoke to the detective in that calm, reasonable voice, the voice designed to make everyone around him doubt themselves. But Detective Hutchins had lived inside Renee's statement for 6 weeks. He was not someone who could be talked out of what he already knew. Cole was detained that evening. Donna shouted for a while. She used the word entrapment. One of the deputies, a young woman with a short gray braid, looked at her and said, "Ma'am, please step back." Something about the evening had taken the volume completely out of Donna. Earl Briggs crossed the yard and stood beside me without speaking for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I knew. I did not do anything. And I knew." I told him that what he did next was what mattered now. He nodded once and went inside. I believed him. Renee testified at trial. The bank records did what financial records always do, told the truth without any emotion whatsoever, which made them devastating. Cole was convicted of domestic assault with documented coercive control. 4 years the restraining order permanent. Anna granted full custody of Jake. Jake is 5 now. He sleeps in the yellow bedroom at my house, the one with the Star Mobile I hung when Anna was a baby, and he has not had a nightmare in 6 months. I believe children know when the source of danger is gone, before their minds have words for it. Their bodies understand safety first. Anna is designing again. Last spring, she took on a project that made her cry when she told me about it, a series of public murals across 3 cities, commissioned by a women's foundation, each one painted by survivors. She works at my kitchen table sometimes, drawings spread out the way she did as a teenager, that focused electric expression on her face that Cole had spent years telling her was excessive. It was never excessive. It was exactly who she was. People ask me sometimes whether I felt guilty going behind Anna's back for 8 months. The honest answer is yes. Some nights I sat in the armchair Thomas used to read in, and I held his old watch in my hands and asked the empty room whether I was doing the right thing. The room gave me nothing. I had to answer myself. What I kept coming back to every single time was this: I was not going behind Anna's back. I was going ahead of her. She was inside a fog I could see clearly from the outside, and sometimes the person who loves you has to build the door before you are ready to open it. I built that door for 8 months. When she was ready, it was already there. If you are sitting somewhere right now and you recognize something in this story, not just the dramatic moment, but the slow disappearing, the apologies for existing, the way someone you love becomes a person who asks permission to want things, then I want you to hear this from a 67-year-old woman who wishes she had moved faster and also knows honestly that she could not have moved any faster than she did. You are not imagining it. You are not being dramatic. You are not alone, even when it feels like you are the only person in the world who can see what is happening. Sometimes, the one who sees it is sitting quietly at the end of the table with a phone in her bag and 8 months of patience waiting for the moment when silence has done enough damage and it is finally time for something else. What would you have done if you had been there that afternoon? I would genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. And if something in this story found you where you needed to be found today, please pass it on to someone you trust. Sometimes, a story like this is exactly the door someone needed to see.